Let's use vibe coding to disrupt a £1 billion business in the UK that is based on predatory practices. In the UK, there are private parking fine companies that push out about £5 million worth of tickets every single day. They tend to operate in shopping centres, hospitals, and this money is not going to councils but instead going into private company. Here's the thing, only about 0.58%, so less than 1% of parking tickets are contested. However, if you do contest a parking ticket, you have a 40 to 45% chance of winning. The main reason why people don't bother to contest parking tickets is they don't know how. There's an information gap. They don't know how to write the letter. And this means there's about $1.5 billion going into these companies that could be avoided. However, if you do go ahead and contest the ticket, then you have a 40 to 45% chance of success, and no contest is about 25%. They won't even bother to contest you back. So what I've gone ahead and done is vibe coded a tool that allows people to basically put in their parking ticket, fill out some information, and it's going to spit out a letter for them that they can use to contest their parking ticket. To do this, I started off in Claude and I described what exactly I wanted to build, and I asked for a project plan. Even if you don't know how to build an application, this is something you can do by explaining what it is you want, and then Claude or ChatGPT is going to go ahead and do all the technical stuff for you. So here, for example, you can see the project plan on screen. It goes through what's going to be inside of my application and writes all the basic code for me. Importantly, you have to tell it to work on the project step by step, because the vibe coding tools we use right now are not very good at dealing with large projects in one go. When I was happy with my project plan, I brought it over to Lovable, which is my vibe coding tool, and added the plan in. And within about half an hour, I had a working prototype, and I'm going to show it to you now. So first, we have a very basic marketing page. I obviously need to do a lot of writing on here, but we're going to be looking at is the actual functionality. So we're going to go ahead and click start your appeal, and it allows me to upload a parking ticket. We can either allow it to be uploaded or we can type in the details, but it's just a bit faster. So I'm going to upload my parking ticket like this and click scan. This is going to be using the Gemini API. Again, this is all being connected by Lovable without me having to do anything in order to pull details from the particular parking ticket. It gives me a bit of a confidence measure as well, but you're asked to check those details and you can edit them right in the application. Once you are okay with the details you've been shown on screen, you go ahead and click next, and you can appeal based on these different grounds, and each of these has some details about what exactly those grounds are. So for this one, let's say signage was unclear or missing, which leads to about 35% of tickets being issued. On the next page, we can describe our circumstances. The more detail you give here, the better, because it's going to be able to tailor the letter for you. We can add a timeline of events and as well as mitigating circumstances. Again, the more the better. So I'm going to go ahead and put in something like, I wasn't able to see the signage because it was covered by foliage. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then I can upload any supporting evidence. So if I did have, for example, a photo of some leaves hanging over the sign, I'd upload it here. I'm going to go ahead and click next though. Then we get to this page where we generate our appeal letter, and it's also going to rank how good my appeal is. Here we go. Here is our appeal letter generated in a few seconds. It's got a 7 out of 10 based on my grading system, and you can see that it is written a formal letter to go up against this particular parking ticket. This is all done by AI, pulling from the relevant legal documentation, and then we can edit it to make sure it has our details in it and download. Let's quickly review the technology that's being used here. So first of all, we're using something called OCR, optical character recognition. Thankfully, the image AIs are really good at this. You can throw an image at them and they're able to read what is on the image. Second, we have a step where it allows us to review and edit. Then we have the statutory grounds on which we can appeal. So we allow the user to pick from a multiple selection, and then they can add in their own story via text and upload images, anything that's going to add to the case. From there, we take all of the information that they've provided. So the information from the ticket itself, the story that they've written, the other details, the supporting photos, etc., pulls it all together and sends it off to artificial intelligence to write up a letter. And I've preloaded it with a pre-formatted, very polite sounding letter, which is going to work best when sending it off for the appeal. It's also being told to explicitly reference the various guidelines, including the UK legislation references like the Traffic Management Act of 2004, to use a professional legal tone, and to appeal strength scoring. Now, one thing that I had to keep in mind when I was building this is that I cannot allow it to give legal advice or to actually file the documentation for the person using this, because then I'm going to be legally responsible. Instead, this is information only, so we need to make that very clear on the website. There's a couple of business models that I could use here. I've seen a lot of the competitors or people who are already in this market who are charging a subscription. That to me makes 0 sense, because you're only going to use this when you actually have a parking fine, which is hopefully not not going to be every single month. I'm thinking about actually releasing this for free. However, there are going to be some AI costs related to running the actual creation of the letter. Therefore, I might open it up on a donation basis so that once you have generated the letter, sent it off, and you're feeling happy with it, you can donate. This may or may not be sufficient to cover the costs, but the AI costs are relatively marginal. Another alternative would be to charge a upsell, so to provide the basic letter for free, but then if somebody wanted to get some additional information or maybe a more polished version in some way, there would be a small cost. That would be a one-off cost rather than subscription. This whole project took me maybe 1 hour to put together, from coming up with the idea to spinning up a basic version, a bit of bug fixing, and then also buying a URL, appealparkingticket.co.uk. But this simple tool, vibe coded in about an hour, has the ability to disrupt a £1 billion business that is based on predatory practices. So tell me, would you use a tool like this? What other kind of tools could we build like this to help citizens? Is there anything that you want to build that's going to help people? If so, then drop them in the comments and we'll make sure they get some visibility.